Hey everybody, this is Jerry, the founder of Bronson Creative and the director of Little Hand, and today we're going to break down a few of my favorite scenes from the film. Let's get started. I'm going to call this one the Street Night Part 2. This is after Danny and Brendan meet for the first time. This is about towards the second half of the film, and they have already met before, but this is when she's been looping and she realizes that she's going to get to recreate the night that they met. And so in doing so, she realizes that if she doesn't interact with him at the party, she will never meet him, which will allow her to not have to recreate anything. And something that's interesting is, and they talk about it earlier in the film, is that she wished he would have been more searching of her. She wishes that he would have been, more outright in how he felt about her, as opposed to her having to always do those things. And so she's changed enough in their aspects of this loop that even though he doesn't know things have changed, she's changed the timeline, and therefore he comes out to meet her. So we filmed this sequence up towards Santa Clarita, and we had a family friend that lived up there, and they allowed us to shoot in front of their house so we'd be able to put the lights and everything. We just filmed this on a basic street, and we armed out a kind of like a big overhead light so it would look like a street light. So those are like the little bright lights that are on top of their hair and things like that. We also knew that we just needed to get out of the city to be able to effectively do this. And so when we're filming, if you're filming on the streets of LA, it'd be too bright, it'd be too loud, it'd be too everything. So our first film, if you've watched any of the behind the scenes on that, the horror, that was all shot in Michigan and in Ohio. And so when we filmed out in LA, everything was just a little bit more difficult. We were also SAG, so there were limitations and there were things that we had to work within, like limitations, which is not a bad thing. It makes for a better film, in my opinion. So, but we found this. We were able to do it. The sequences that happen at the pool, that's just the backyard of this house. So when you're making your film, if you're looking for locations, then try to find locations that are close to each other. We knew that we only had one night to do this, and so we knew we had to film overnight. So we filmed from like 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. was the goal. And so we set up from kind of like 6 to 7:30. Once it got nighttime, we filmed all of the scenes at the pool. We broke all of the extras. They were able to go, and then the rest of the crew and the 2 actors went outside on the street for these sequences. So it was a little difficult. You'll see early on, whenever they're walking out, we played with like the darkness. So we just embraced these kind of things that some people are going to disappear. You'll see that Brendan actually disappears into the darkness at the very beginning of this sequence. You can rewind if you missed that. And you'll be able to see that he disappears. And I really wanted that to be a highlight of it, because he's almost on the cusp of disappearing from her life. If he doesn't come out, she's never going to meet him, and she's just going to move forward. He's going to move forward. They're going to have completely different scenarios that they're going to get themselves into. And so here it is. So you can see when it cuts to this wide shot, he kind of just disappears. And I thought that was a very, very good visual. Same with this one, where he's like coming out of the darkness. Like, she's actively asking him to come back, which is, I thought, just an interesting visual when we're doing this. You also see the aspect ratio of this. This was early on, so this is 1.66 to 1. So if you've seen the other ones, you'll see that black bar on there. It's called European widescreen. It's called a lot of different things. If you've watched any of Stanley Kubrick's movies from early on, you'll see that sometimes this is the aspect ratio. We didn't want to go full 4:3 because I didn't want to crop that much off, but I did want to make it a little bit more claustrophobic, and that's why we kind of punched in on that. We also went black and white after our festival run, and so that was something we had discussed early on, but we didn't do it for the festival run because everybody said that it might be a little too much, that people might not like it. But after we did the festival run, I decided to recolor it in black and white for the director's cut, and that's what you're watching now. So if you saw this at a festival, you may have seen it in color, and so but now you'll see it in black and white. So this is getting to my favorite part of the sequence, and one of the things that we were playing with, I had drawn up way too many storyboards for this. I had dolly shots, and we had push-ins and all kinds of stuff, close-ups and accents of their hands, and I wanted to, because this sequence is almost 10 minutes long, and I was like, okay, I want to have all these things in here that I've never been able to put into a sequence before. And when you're working on your film and it's low budget, usually you don't have a lot of time for those flourishes and those little accents. So, but with this film, I was like, oh, we have the whole second half of the day. It's all one contained location. What happens if we go ahead and try to do all these things? And so we were playing with all of that. And then we got to the end of this part of the sequence right here. They sit down by the car, and we were able to start looking at these things from a different aspect. So when you're making a film and you're doing it kind of in isolation, you're looking at the storyboard, you're looking at the script, things like that. You see 10 pages of like these dialogue heavy things, and you're like, whoa, how am I going to cover that? And so for those of you that may have saw a previous one, we talk a little bit about coverage. And what I said is, I don't think you need coverage if you don't need coverage. And what I mean by that is, take consideration of what movie you're making. If your movie requires coverage and you need to see all those reactions in singular instances, then you need to do it. And so, but that is not just, it's not always the case. Sometimes you're over covering things just because that's what you've been told to do. You get coverage. A lot of times when you're producing and somebody else is producing for you, they might request that. And so they might ask for it. There's a pretty famous scenario with David Lynch. I think he's working on one of the Twin Peaks, and a producer says it's too long. And he's like, you're always talking about how long it is. It's as long as it needs to be. And so as a filmmaker and as an artist, it's not about what's in it, it's about what's not in it. So if you need to feel it in your heart that this is too long, this is too short. Do I need to cut? And sometimes you don't need to. So cut those things out and just decide what you need in the film. Trust that you're making the film to the best of your vision. Take the input of your collaborators, which is exactly what I did on this one. And when we were filming this, we got to the end of this take in this kind of wide shot, or this like two shot next to the car. And I said to Tristan, I said, do we need coverage? And he goes, of what?
I'm sorry, I just need...
And I just kind of like stopped and I go, oh, this is the scene. This is the scene. It's the two of them. We've been cutting back and forth between the two of them, showing them their different perspectives of this whole film. They see it from one thing, they see it from another thing. And then when this happened, I said, oh, this is not, it's from their hours, from their collective experience now. This is the first time that they're having the experience at the same time together. One of them doesn't know what's been happening, because it's the first time he's met her, but the other one knows exactly what. And I was like, I want to see both of those reactions at the same time. If I cut back and forth, you won't see it. Despite all of the prep that we had done, all the pre-production we had done, all the storyboarding and shot listing and everything we had done of all these different takes, we decided to just film this from this one angle. We decided that was what we were going to do. We're going to have this one shot that you just ride on the whole time. What's important? Is a dark, empty street important? Is a close-up of a hand important? Is a close-up of the person's face saying one line and the next person saying another line? We decided the answer was no. And so this is the sequence. If you've seen the behind the scenes for Seize the Carp, I do this again in my third film, excuse me, where I just ride out a long shot on a trampoline where you're just seeing the sun setting. So it's all about tone, it's all about emotion, it's all about the way I'm hoping that I will convey what I'm feeling to you. And for this one, I wanted to be a little closer to them. This was the first time they were actually having a real conversation that could lead to change. Will it? You know, is up to how the rest of the film plays out. I won't ruin it for you, but then you can cut to this wide shot and see that they are isolated. They are completely alone. They had that conversation with nobody around them. I only need to show it once. If I kept cutting from a wide to a close to a medium, it would become repetitive, and I didn't want that. So we decided, after we did that two shot, that was going to be the sequence. And then when we got up for this last couple bits, we went back into a little bit more traditional coverage. And so that you could keep bouncing back and forth, because we were moving into a montage where there were going to be a lot of close-ups that were match frames of Danny as she was talking, kind of in this like almost prose over the top of these moments. But we wanted to see, you know, what would happen if we just force you to be in this simple kind of two-shot. As an audience member, as a viewer, as the characters, what happens when we just have to sit there and look at just these two things? It may be uncomfortable, that's fine. The moment is uncomfortable for Danny and Brendan. The moment is uncomfortable for the characters, so why shouldn't it be uncomfortable for the audience? So as you're considering what your film is going to look like and what you want to bring to the table, consider these things. It's not just the story, it's how you film it. The character, or the camera is a character, and you have to consider that whenever you're making your film. So this is the end of the street sequence. And so I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it. If you're finding this because you already bought a DVD, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Really, I cannot do it without the support. And so if you haven't considered buying a physical copy of the movie, check out bronsoncreative.us. All 3 of my films are over there. You can get vinyls of the albums. I just believe that for this art form to continue, we need to go back to physical. So thank you for your support. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thanks for checking out the street sequence from Little Hand.